Onward is a new movie from Disney's Pixar, which came out back in March. It generally got good reviews from mainstream critics, but only made about half of its budget, probably mostly thanks to the current world issues. The movie is an urban fantasy story about the quest of two brothers to try to see their deceased father again, which thanks to a magical staff they have the opportunity to do if they can find a special crystal within the next 24 hours. I don't watch a ton of these types of movies anymore, but I do from time to time, and this one certainly has the regular old Disney charm that you would expect. It is a genuinely heartwarming story about brotherly love and familial piety, and both the visuals and the writing are interesting throughout. It is an urban fantasy movie, so most of the major plot points and events are basically performing some sort of classic fantasy trope through the lens of a modern world populated entirely by mythical creatures. However, none of that is why I'm talking to you about this film today. It is a good movie based on all that alone, and I would recommend it to you if you had 90 minutes to spend. But the real question that I'm going to try to answer today is Onward based? And a quick warning that I will be spoiling a lot about this movie. I won't be revealing the resolution of the main quest to find their father, but a lot of other stuff will be. Considering the first time that I heard about this film is when it was announced that it would be Pixar's first movie with an LGBT character, this might seem like a bit of a strange question. However, that is just one throwaway sentence. Obviously, it's inserted for diversity points, and of course, that isn't nearly enough for the progressives, since a quick Google search will show many outlets complaining that that isn't nearly enough from Pixar. That one scene doesn't really have anything to do with the story as a whole, which I do think has quite a few interesting themes. The movie begins with a prologue narrating the history of this land. Once upon a time, the world was filled with magic. Wizards were able to cast a variety of different spells, and they did so in the service of their communities, providing them with light, warmth, and protection. And the different races had many different superhuman abilities, like centaurs, who could run at high speeds, and pixies who could fly through the air. But eventually, new technologies were discovered which could replace these abilities with far less effort required. The prologue shows an apprentice wizard failing to perform a light spell, only to discover a light bulb, which can cast light for an entire room with just a flick of a switch. He remarks, "'Tis so easy." In a very short amount of time, things which once took years of study were accomplished by anyone with little to no effort, and slowly magic faded away from the world. That is the backdrop on which the main story plays out. When I first had this movie recommended to me, I was skeptical that it would have anything interesting to say, but just seeing the prologue was enough to make me interested. The new world that is shown can only be described as degenerated. This is actually an interesting turn on that phrase. Of course, it's not actually used in the movie at all, but the way that we generally use it is to refer to some sort of specific gross thing that people are doing. That isn't really just what that phrase means. There's a lot more to it. Degeneracy, degeneration. It refers to falling from something, some sort of ideal that was once upheld, which now is abandoned. It's often used to describe the modern lack of sexual standards, but there's so much more to it. And this world that they show really helps you feel the degeneration. Just the first couple of characters, you can notice this really easily. The mother that is shown is pretty clearly shown to be overweight. She's not incredibly obese or anything, but you can tell that she just does not look like what someone would have looked like in the world that they had just shown you in the prologue. The new world that the apprentice had referred to, the world that is so easy, allows for people to be in this sort of condition. And you can see this very clearly in many different characters throughout the movie. The mother's boyfriend is a centaur, and he's another good example of this that you can see early on. Just a few minutes ago, you were shown them galloping across fields, and now he's riding in a police car. And when asked why doesn't he run, he says that he doesn't need to. A similar scene takes place later on in the movie when the brothers bump into a gang of pixies, all of which ride motorcycles but have completely lost their ability to fly. However, when their bikes are destroyed, hard times create strong men, and they regain their ability to use their wings. Another similar theme in the movie is the desecration of sacred places and objects. One of the first establishments that are referred to in the movie is the so-called Burger Shrine. Now, this is just a fast food establishment. The fact that a term, which presumably was once important to them, shrine, is now being treated as just some throwaway commercial object, shows the way that there has been a degeneration in what the culture values. Similarly, the older brother protests the destruction of an ancient fountain, which clearly also had a great significance to the people that lived there once upon a time. Just a few months later, I'm not sure if a scene like that could even be made now, considering all the destruction currently happening. The younger brother is the protagonist, and he's more or less a generic nerdy, shy kid. Well, the older brother is some sort of mix between a nerd and a punk. He's obsessed with the history of magic and what the world once was. The older brother is a really good example of how people act with this, because the entire time he's clearly LARPing. He does actually care about the past and about the history of the land that he inhabits, but he's so disconnected from it that it's hard for him really to seriously connect with it. It's actually really probably impossible for him to connect with it the way people once did. So he tries his best, but it always seems like it's not entirely serious. Like, at the end of the day, he's just a guy who plays a bit too much D&D, which he is shown to be a fan of. The brothers get the staff, which allows them to temporarily resurrect their father as a present on the younger brother's 16th birthday. Only the younger brother has the natural ability to perform the spell to resurrect their father, but he fails on his first attempt, and all they're able to resurrect is his legs. So they have to, within 24 hours, find another crystal which will allow them to perform the same spell and finish it up. The older brother knows to go to an old tavern to find a map which will lead them to the crystal that they need. But once they arrive there, to this ancient tavern that he had read about, he discovers that it isn't the beautiful historic building that he read about, but instead it's been perverted to be some rinky-dinky diner. The building was once watched over by a line of fierce manticores, but the one that has now inherited it only cares about keeping her customers happy, and has abandoned virtually all of the traditions that once kept this building alive. This is actually something I have a little bit of an experience with, being a history nerd myself. There's been many times that I've researched something, learnt a lot about it, only to look up what it's like in the present to find out it's been utterly destroyed or desecrated. The brothers are, however, able to rouse her eventually, and she flies into a rage, destroying the cheap decorations that have perverted this building that was once so important to her family. The brothers move along to find their crystal, and later on, the Manticore and their mother team up to find them, and to get them a special magic sword, because they will need it to defeat the monster that awaits where their crystal is hidden. This sword is at a pawn shop where the Manticore sold it, and once she finds it, she's both visibly and audibly excited, so though the owner was going to sell it for a trivial sum, she decides to price gouge and charge her an extraordinary amount of money, so they decide to take it by force. As multiple scenes have already done by this point, this just once again helps illustrate the way that objects which once were considered priceless are now just something to be bartered over, and something which the rightful owner of allowed to slip from her possession for what was probably also a trivial sum. The climax of the movie is a fight with a dragon, which is literally made out of the rubble of the New World. It's a combination of concrete and the school that the boys went to, and they have to use a combination of the sword from the old world, along with their staff and the revitalized power of the Manticore to defeat this monster. The movie ends with magic once more re-injected back into the society, with pixies flying and centaurs galloping again. The symbolism certainly can be pretty heavy-handed at times, but this is a children's movie after all, so I didn't find it particularly bothersome. And the movie's not without its faults. It does have that one scene that I mentioned earlier, and there is also the standard strong woman trope, and some other things. But overall, I would say this movie does have quite a few interesting themes, and it's a nice critique of the modern world. Thanks for watching. Please donate to my Subscribe Star if you enjoy my content, and please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with anyone who you think might find it interesting. And this Monday, me and Charlemagne will be discussing with Sargon of Akkad on this channel about Moldbug, the Cathedral, and some other ideas. And a special thanks to Seth Apex, who commissioned the making of this video. And thank you to my other donors, Emmett Vestry, Hexorius, Quo Pregranator, The Right Cafe, and Charismatic Byzantine. And thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye.